What's up, guys? It's Backchat TV, and I'm so happy to see you back again. Thanks for tuning in. Today, we have the authentic true life story of Pound for Pound, great Oscar Deal Hoya and his tumultuous life. Oscar Deal Hoya is a famous American boxer with more than 130 fights to his name. He has accomplished many things in his life, from winning 10 boxing world titles in 6 different weight classes to becoming an accomplished and prominent entrepreneur, artist, and philanthropist. Boxer Oscar Deal Hoya, often referred to as the Golden Boy, won a gold medal at the 1992 Olympics at the age of 19 and began his boxing career at a young age. Oscar Deal Hoya was one of the most popular athletes in boxing history. Before retiring in 2009, he had hundreds of millions of dollars from pay-per-view fights. Oscar Deal Hoya was born in East Los Angeles, California on February 4, 1973. His parents are Don Joel De La Hoya Sr. and Cecilia De La Hoya, and had immigrated to the United States from Mexico before he was born. Oscar grew up in a poor area, and his father worked as a warehouse clerk for a heating and cooling company to put food on the table. Throughout Oscar Deal Hoya's career, he always had a very calm, clean-cut image. However, the reality of his life was in fact very different. His relationship with his parents was quite difficult, to say the least. The perception over the years was that Oscar's relationship with his father Joel was complicated irrespective of how hard he tried, and no matter what accomplished, Oscar had failed to win his dad's approval. Conversely, his mother was painted as a sweet woman, sensitive to Oscar's feelings. In reality, we're now told, Oscar's relationship with his mom was just as complicated. He tells the story of running into the street for a ball when he was a kid and winding up under a car, but miraculously escaping harm. Watching his mother frantically run down the street, Oscar waited for her to give him a hug, but instead, she whacked him for being so careless. It would not be the first or last time she put her hands on him out of anger. "I never saw her hit my brother or sister, only me, and I hated it when she hit me," he says. "When I stepped into the ring, I visualized my mother's face on an opponent and unloaded." Expanding on the complex relationship, De La Hoya says, "A few days after Barcelona, Olympics 1992, I went to Mom's grave to talk to her. I never had the courage to tell her I loved her. I wish I had." Perhaps the fighter's difficult relationship with his own parents made it difficult to be a good father himself. Several years later, a now infamous picture of De La Hoya, dressed in a fishnet outfit and high heels, drew widespread attention. "My lawyer said these people want $1 million to make the pictures go away." The first thing I thought about was my kids. We hired a forensic expert who could tell whether the pictures were real or doctored. He said they were fake photos, and everyone believed him, so I'm in the clear. It is perhaps noble of De La Hoya to think about the embarrassment those photos might have potentially caused his kids, but the bottom line is that for the most part, he has been an absentee figure in the life of the 3 of them, all of whom were born to different women. That his 2 sons and daughter have seemed to turn out okay reflects well on their mother's behalf, not his. In fact, the 3 siblings, Jacob, Atiana, and Devon, did not meet until they were grown up. They have established a much better relationship with one another than with him. "We more than our own dad look out for one another," admits Jacob. Says Devon of meeting his dad after an absence of many years, "I wanted to hug him and punch him." "Being a father is a huge responsibility," acknowledged De La Hoya. "I didn't know how to do it. I handled it by having drinks. When I turned pro, I would drink as much as I could between fights because I always thought money would take care of everything. All the pain I caused, I regret it." Reportedly, there is a significant other in the life of De La Hoya at the present time. His past relationships have never worked out for long. They have been accompanied with lies and deceit on Oscar's part. Not that it was intended to be that way, but the temptation of the nightlife and the fringe benefits it afforded a celebrity such as himself was too tempting to turn down for a stable family environment. "I wasn't happy being at home," he admits. But is he now? Dela Hoya still seems to have an insatiable hunger for the limelight. It is satisfied to an extent with his involvement as the head of his company Golden Boy Promotions. But nothing compares to when Dela Hoya was riding the crest, fighting in the biggest fights, and being in demand as a megastar. The 10-part series, The Last Dance, put Michael Jordan front and center again, reminding us of just how big an icon he was, and still is in the process. Doubtless, Oscar was hoping for the same result. But just like the complexities of the man, the timing of HBO's airing of The Golden Boy was strange. In a week in which the boxing world was focusing on the Naoya Inoue Stephen Fulton and Terence Crawford Errol Spence, there was not as much interest in the Dela Hoya documentary as there would have been if it had premiered at a different time. There also were some disturbing rape accusations in which no criminal charges were ever filed, but a civil case was settled. "It's not in my DNA to do something like that," Oscar says. "I'm young, I have popularity, I have money, and that's what they want," he said, referring to the women that were around him. Dela Hoya's parents were Mexican. He is proud of his heritage, but was viewed as an outsider when he boxed the great Julio Cesar Chavez. It motivated him more than it ever did for any opponent. "I respect the Mexican culture, but I'm proud to have been born in the USA. I had something to prove to a culture. I was never so focused." There is excellent footage of Dela Hoya's 2 stoppages of Chavez. And there was a revealing comment from his dad that showed just how hard it was for Oscar to get acceptance. Asked who would have won had they boxed during their respective primes, Joel Dela Hoya said, "If they had been the same age, it would have been a tough fight, but Julio would have beaten Oscar." Dela Hoya described Pernell Whitaker as the best boxer in the world, pound for pound, when they met in 1997. But the reality is that Whitaker, while still formidable, was past his best. That was reflected in the 3-1 odds favoring Oscar. The sad ending of Dela Hoya's career is graphically shown with the pummeling he takes from Manny Pacquiao. "I knew this would be my last fight, but I didn't tell anyone," he says. "For the first time, I was drunk in training camp. If I get hit with one punch and never wake up, it's okay," he recalls thinking. The signs that Dela Hoya had serious issues outside of the ring were there for all to see, but his status made virtually everyone ignore them. You know, there were a lot of empty years growing up, being absent for several years of their childhood, and that's the one part I most regret, is obviously not being there for them, not knowing how to be there for them. But you know, today we have a great relationship, but it's a working relationship. It never stops. We have so much to catch up on. You know, I learned a lot from my parents, and obviously that's exactly what I do not want to be." Dela Hoya says his personal and professional drive was fueled by the physical and emotional abuse he suffered from his parents, and says he was grateful for boxing so he could channel that pain. "My household was abusive, to say the least. My mother passed away when I was 17 years old, and what people don't know is that she was very abusive physically, and that I was the only child that would receive it," Dela Hoya said. "When I would get inside the ring, I would have all this anger and rage, and I wouldn't change it for anything, because I strongly feel that what I lived, my life, the course of my life, was just meant to be because of how I lived at home, what I endured over the years, the abuse from my father and my mother, and so I had an outlet with boxing." The last fight. Dela Hoya says his fight against Manny Pacquiao was the one that eats at him the most. Even during the training, he felt his heart and drive were not there, and he began drinking during training. "I remember not feeling it like emotionally and physically. I remember not feeling my body was different. My energy was different. My mind was different. I didn't want to be there anymore, Dela Hoya recalled. I remember just really not being into it. And when I stepped into the ring, when I fought him in Las Vegas, I already knew deep down inside that I was going to get beat up on. I already knew that I was a loser, and I remember there was a certain round where he was just throwing punches at me and beating me up, and I was thinking in my head, please just land the one punch to end it all. I was literally saying that, and then sure enough, the referee called off the fight. It was over, and that's where my career ended. The fighter spent several stints in rehab after abusing alcohol and drugs, but refutes the notion that he had addiction issues. I don't feel it was an addiction. I really don't. I just felt that I was lost. I just felt that I had no direction. I just felt that drinking and drugs and women were going to fill that void that I had in my heart, Dela Hoya explained. I didn't know how to get out of it, and I had to make the decision to get out. I went to rehabs, I did go through therapies, and I don't know, I think at this time now of my life, I made the decision and I prepared myself over the years to just find balance. It's all balance, you know. Now, my life is great. A couple of years ago, Oscar Deal Hoya approached his father, Joel Sr., and told him, "I love you, Dad." Joel Sr. started crying and told him he also loved him. These were words the former boxer would have appreciated hearing from his parents while growing up in East Los Angeles decades ago. When my mother was alive, she never told me she loved me or that she missed me. She never showed me any affection or love, said Dela Hoya in an interview with LA Times en Espanol. The boxing legend took those emotions and channeled them into his relationship with his father. He began the healing process with his father by taking the first step in mending that connection, and now realizes how important a relationship between parents and their children is. Now in charge of Golden Boy Promotions and the man responsible for a number of boxing's biggest fights in the modern era, Dela Hoya can reflect on his career inside the ring honestly. After sharing the ring with the likes of Floyd Mayweather, Bernard Hopkins and Manny Pacquiao, Dela Hoya has been in with some crafty operators, but what fighter had the best defense? It would have to be a coin flip between Pernell Whitaker and Mayweather, said Dela Hoya when speaking to The Ring in 2018. Both had different styles. Whitaker used his waist more and stood in front of you and was very slippery. Mayweather was more of a boxer that moved just a little bit more. The most difficult to hit was probably Whitaker. The American admitted this despite the fact he has shared the ring with all-time greats Floyd Mayweather Jr. and Manny Pacquiao, and he was knocked out by Bernard Hopkins. But when asked who was the best puncher he faced in his career, Dela Hoya named Quartet, whom he clashed with in 1999. His punches were like bricks, Dela Hoya told The Ring. He hit me and it would sting me. Every punch he would hit me with, it would rattle me. Dela Hoya also admitted Quartet had the best jab of anyone he had faced, saying, "Not only was it powerful, it was very consistent. All the fights I lost were obviously all very tough fights, but Mayweather was not my toughest fight. Fighting Mayweather was more mentally draining than anything else because you have to be very alert and sharp, and there were a lot of mind games. Personally, I thought and still think I beat Mayweather on that night, and although Mayweather is an all-time great, I always felt like he couldn't avoid or block my jab." Oscar has continued to face personal issues, but not nearly as bad as before. He has had very public issues with superstar boxer Canelo Alvarez and even more recently, Ryan Garcia, who he promotes, but other than this, he says he has made peace with his demons. Wow, I can't believe you're still here. You guys are awesome. Thank you for staying with Backchat TV as long as you did, and if you stayed because you had nothing better to do, then on your bike, get off my channel. Until next time, have a terrible day. I guess I'll see you again. Never.